I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
And welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks to each and every one of you who checked out this episode, or especially those who subscribe to the series and listen to the multiple interviews every single week. We put out new ones every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, it doesn't matter where you're listening from. We will continue to send the new episodes to you once you subscribe so you can keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones and know what's happening in the music world. I'm Kyle Meredith, and today I'm going to be talking with Ocean Alley. In fact, Mitch Galbraith is going to be on the phone to discuss their brand new record called Lonely Diamond. Now, this is the album that follows them topping the Triple J Hottest 100 chart, landing at number one with their song Confidence. So we're going to be talking about what that meant to them as a moment in their history to the band, but also the pressure that it added on for this record. They're going to be discussing the themes of exploration and escapism and creating a dream world, especially through writing about landscapes. Now, the band's based in Australia, and Mitch will tell you that landscapes and nature is just a big part of their environment. No pun intended on that. But it's actually really helpful as a songwriting tool. And it's also with that in mind, we discuss what the environment is like in Australia. And I'm talking about climate change. You know, we've heard about the brush fires. We've heard about the excessive heat days. So we're going to get into that just a little bit as well. We'll mention some of their countrymen rolling blackout coastal fever. It's also a quick little story about how Erica Andre inspired the first single from this record. And Mitch will tell us about the bookends of the album, a couple of instrumentals, and really wanted to go for a surf rock vibe on this new record. So let's jump into it. Talking about the album Lonely Diamond, it's Kyle Meredith with Ocean Alley.
Hi, Kyle. I'm very well. How are you?
The new record is called Lonely Diamond, and it's a lot of fun, first off. The nice thing is, is that there has been a long lead into it. You know, the singles have been spread out, and I think we've all kind of got a good feeling for what this record was going to sound like going into it. But I feel like the place to start is a little bit before it, because I shouldn't miss this opportunity. You all went into this record with a lot of attention, especially in Australia, right? Because Confidence had just topped the Triple J 100, which that's a big deal, right? I mean, I don't know if you want to spell that out for American audience here, but that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's a huge music poll, and it's very popular, obviously, in Australia and New Zealand. And a lot of the Aussie expats who live overseas really get involved and throw their big parties as well. Obviously, the time difference is a bit off, but yeah, that's a huge accolade for us, and it's sort of being recognised because it's a listener poll. So it's just the listeners that call up and vote for the most popular song of the last year that was released in the last year. It's very flattering to come out in the number one spot, and we got a few other songs in the 100 countdown as well. Yeah, it just means the world to us. But of course, yeah, the spotlight was us shining right in our eyes when we went to release the follow-up music. And half of the record's been out for a while, and of course, you've listened to the rest of the record.
I know a lot of artists, I think they would rather not have a lot of attention going in when you actually start a process like that. Did that throw you guys off at all? Did that add to anything?
Yeah, we did feel quite a lot of pressure, and we were kind of all right with that. We expected that was going to happen even before we fully got into writing the next lot of new music. But it definitely spurred us on a bit more, I think. It was the persuasion that we needed to get back to work. And it in a way, it's sort of the opposite. It brought us back down to earth because we knew that we couldn't get away with bludging or taking it half-assed anymore. We really had to put the same amount of effort, and if not more, into this next record. And I think it's definitely this is the record that we put the most thought and the most work into, and hopefully it shows. Hopefully other people can see that as well.
I mean, I've heard you talk about just the preparation like you guys have never done before on working for the songs. What does that mean in this sense? Is that a lot of rewrites?
It was a lot of rewrites, and I mean, you make it sound like it's pretty rigid and formal structure way that we go about recording these songs and rewriting them, but it's not. But it's more about having the patience and having the the courage just to sort of sit there and let it stew, and yeah, it's definitely something that can't be rushed. That you don't generally write a fantastic song in an afternoon. And we tend to come up with our ideas fairly quickly, but as you just mentioned, yeah, and I've said before that we got a lot of extra time on this record to come back to things, and I think that helped us. We were touring quite hectically throughout the whole time, and we were at our projects and come back to them with fresh eyes, and that definitely helped them progress, in a more thoughtful manner than if we had have just sort of rushed through it and got down the first thing that came to our head.
Yeah, I was talking with another band from the country with Rolling Blackouts a few days ago, and I only bring them up because they were sort of talking about something similar, that the touring especially caused this case of separation for them.
Yeah,
just being so far while life goes on back at home. The two themes I think that you all have talked about is exploration and escapism, and I didn't know if that was for similar reasons for you. Why did those two themes crop up so often in this?
I think they more came to be in the way that we wanted the full body of work to feel. We wanted it to feel like a bit of a I don't want to use this word because it's so cliche, but journey for the listener. We really wanted them to be transported to another place and somewhere, private, somewhere away from prying where they could really get into the music. And so in that way, we've kind of coupled it with that some space imagery, some space metaphors in the lyric. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of almost a bit of a dream world kind of thing. And we like to tie our music to landscapes because we think that it complements the listening experience for sure.
Now, I had the question here about imagery because there is so much imagery within the record, within your songs. You don't even always have to name the place that you're in. I kind of feel the area. That's what
you want it to remain challenging, and you want it to be just a bespoke experience for each of the listener. They can kind of choose their own adventure.
In Australia specifically too. I mean, in a broad general sense, as we look at the news anyway, that hasn't been the easiest place to live in the past few years. Did that inform the record in itself? Because what I'm talking about here is we've heard about climate, what's happening with climate change down there. I think I've heard more from not as much as our government, but more from your government, I think, than a lot of other places. It just seems like there's been a lot going on that hasn't been. I mean, it's not easy anywhere in the world, I should point out. But
yeah. There were the bushfires, and then immediately after that, there was some really bad flooding. And I think, I can just speak for Australians only, but I suppose we quite closely tied to our landscapes, and we live near the coast and we live near the beach, and we've grown up amongst nature and enjoying the outdoors. So we have that inherent connection. And it sort of reminds me a bit about, while we're on the Rolling Blackouts tangent, those guys also write the last record. There was Sister's Jeans was one of my favourite songs off that, and it has such vivid imagery, but more so of a cityscape. And maybe it's just the Australians and we are connected to the land in that kind of way. And yeah, that's an important part of our life, I suppose. But the record kind of wasn't tied to that. It was more so just, maybe it was just a bit of a subconscious kind of effort, I suppose.
There was something, and maybe it was a press release specifically about, I think it said drugs at festivals. And when you listen to the song Stained Glass, there is that line in there, that's why you shouldn't take drugs, if I've got that one right. What's that about?
It's sort of an admission to do the right thing. Of course you shouldn't take drugs. That's not, we like to have a beer every now and again, and we like to party, probably smoke too many cigarettes. But, I don't know. You'll have to really, if you really want to deep dive into that, you'll have to ask Baden. But it's an admission to do the right thing, and that line definitely was not written in response to that whole thing as well. It was kind of a bit of a coincidence. People have brought that up before, but yeah, happy accident or unhappy accident, who knows?
Right. And that, I mean, that was the first song too, right? That was, as I read, that was the one that started it off.
Yeah. That was one of the first songs written as well. A lot of the rest of the record was not even conceived of at that time.
Did it say anything about the upcoming direction, that song? Is it one of those moments where that sort of sets the template?
It did at the time. That song was definitely one of the first ones written, and it did at the time. It was a style that we hadn't sort of visited, I don't think, in the record before that. But all of the songs sort of influence how the rest of them kind of get written. They sort of get written in that chronological fashion, one after the other. I'm probably not very good at working on too many things at once.
Well, I definitely want to ask about the latest single too, because Hot Chicken, that's a fun song. It's a very fun song. And that one, as I read,
it was fun for us.
Yeah, I hear it's even started off as a bit of a joke.
Yeah, it did. We actually it was a comedian did a bit of a weird song that we saw on television. It was Eric Andre. He's an American, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was just this weird song on the internet, and we really liked the sound of it, and we would just muck around and play it while we're rehearsing and in the middle of stuff, and we sort of just kept the whole vibe and sound of it, but then complemented it with some lyrics. Yeah, it was really fun for us to write because it was kind of a different style than we'd done before, and it was definitely one of the most upbeat songs on the record, for sure.
I'd also ask, especially as the guitarist, maybe there are stories, maybe there's not, but bookending the record with the instrumentals, these are such great little songs in themselves, and talk about setting the mood. Can you talk a little bit about those two tracks? Because I feel like, without lyrics, a lot of those types of songs do tend to be looked over, especially in interviews, at least.
They need some explaining. They were true bookends in the fact that they were inserted there at the very last moment. They were written in the studio when we were up there, and they were written after all the other material was pretty much decided on. And we'd never done anything like that before. We'd never had an intro or outro to a record, let alone come up with them, in the final week of the studio that we had booked. And we really liked them, and it was a chance for us to really solidify the themes of the record that we wanted to get across. And it was a way for us to complete the story and make it sound cohesive and tie it all together. So we had so much fun with jamming them late into the night during that last week in the studio, and then once we got an idea down, we just frantically tracked both the ideas, and it just went really quick, but they were probably two of the most enjoyable songs to write.
I love listening to them. You've mentioned several times in the interview, there are a lot of styles they go throughout this record, and as you say, even styles that you hadn't tried before. Is that part of a conscious conversation to say that, we should try to do this, this sound this time around? Yeah,
well, we always want to make sure we're not writing multiples of the same song pretty much. So maybe less so trying to write in all the different styles, more so just trying to keep it fresh and keeping each song, unique so that it can stand alone when it needs to. But that being said, we've sort of progressed our sound as well, and sonically we've grown, and sonically our style, and we still like to keep it all, that classic rock sound, really natural. But we decided to go down a bit of a western sort of guitar sounding, sort of building on a surf rock vibe. And again, the reason for doing that was probably just to complement the imagery, on the record and the imagery that's associated with the record. Yeah.
Space Cowboys.
Space Cowboys. Yeah. Surfing Space Cowboys.
Surfing Space Cowboys. That's it. That's not a completely, unheard of little genre, although I wouldn't call it, widely popular. But I started thinking about Marty Stewart and his fabulous superlatives. They sort of do a lot. We have My Morning Jacket here in Louisville, and they kind of touch on that a little bit. But there was...
Picture Carlos Santana playing alongside the Beach Boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of vibe.
I like that. Well, you all certainly do it well. I will say that.
Thank you.
I really enjoy what I'm hearing on here. Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it today. I've really enjoyed Lonely Diamond, and hopefully we'll be able to catch it on the road at some point. Hopefully.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, and thank you everyone in Louisville, Kentucky. We'll eventually when all this is over, we'll be there to play the record and and all the old favourites as well. We can't wait.
All right. Sounds great, man. Take care out there.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
My thanks to Mitch. The brand new Ocean Alley record is called Lonely Diamond. Thank you to Mitch for the conversation. Thanks to you for checking out the interview. Again, before you get out of here, if you're not already a subscriber, I do hope you hit that. We'll give you a new interview every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday so you can keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones, know what's happening in the music world. Find us at any of the major podcast hotspots like iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to get your podcasts from. Just type in Kyle Meredith with, hit subscribe. After that, head to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres and music news, anniversary spins, and bonus interviews. WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound, they've got your music and film news. You can also find me on the social medias at Kyle Meredith. Follow and like in the appropriate places, please. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.